Meet Rodney, a 45-year-old average American guy. But there's nothing average about the aches that wake him up every morning. He used to think he was invincible in his 30s, but boy was he wrong. And now, he's got a message for you. Don't be Rodney. Let's hear it from him to know what he wishes he'd known in his 30s to avoid injury. Watch this video till the very end and see if you've been making some of the mistakes he made in his 30s that came back to haunt him in his 40s. Proper warm-up and cool down. The ignition and the brake. At 30, your body is like a newly purchased sports car, capable of accelerating quickly. But without igniting the engine properly or applying the brakes gently, you're bound to crash or wear out the parts prematurely. By the time Rodney reached 45, the cumulative effect of skipping warm-ups and cool-downs became apparent. He ended up dealing with joint pain, muscle stiffness, and even serious injuries. A study found that a proper warm-up could reduce injury risk by 50% for recreational athletes. At 30, Rodney could have used this knowledge to build a habit, giving his muscles and tendons time to adjust to the physical demands and reducing injury risks significantly. Now, his muscles and tendons aren't as forgiving, and skipping this crucial step often leads to tears, strains, and prolonged recovery times. Strength training. Building the fortress. Strength training is like laying the strong foundation stones for a fortress. It's about building the walls that protect your joints and support your spine. Without those walls, by 45, you're left vulnerable to the elements, aches, pains, and unexpected injuries. The fortress crumbles more easily. Rodney learned the hard way that muscle mass declines by about 3 to 8% per decade after the age of 30, accelerating after 60. If he had built muscle mass through strength training in his 30s, he could have slowed down this decline, maintaining strength, balance, and mobility. Starting this journey in his 40s meant he had to work much harder to regain that lost muscle, and the risk of injury was significantly higher. Focus on flexibility. The elastic band principle. Think of your muscles and tendons as elastic bands. In your 30s, those bands are supple, stretchy, and resilient. But without regular stretching and flexibility work, they start to dry up like old rubber bands, prone to snapping under pressure. When you reach 45, tight muscles can pull on joints and lead to painful issues such as tendinitis or joint pain. Rodney wishes he had prioritized flexibility earlier because regular stretching could have prevented the stiffness and muscle imbalances he began to experience later. A study found that regular stretching could reduce muscle soreness by 25% and injury risk by 32%. If he had focused on stretching in his 30s, he would have maintained the elasticity of his muscles and connective tissues, giving him more freedom of movement and reducing wear and tear on his joints as he got older. Listen to your body. The warning light. Your body is like a finely tuned machine with warning lights that flash before breakdowns. At 30, ignoring these warning lights might not lead to immediate damage, but it's like driving a car while the check engine light is on. By 45, you might be paying for ignoring those early signs with chronic conditions like arthritis or lower back pain. Rodney learned that not listening to his body led to overuse injuries and chronic pain that became much harder to manage over time. Research from the University of Pittsburgh suggests that understanding and responding to body signals can prevent overuse injuries. If he had been more attuned to these signals in his 30s, he could have stopped before causing serious damage. Use proper technique and form the architect's blueprint. Every workout or movement is like constructing a building. Without following the architect's blueprint, proper form, the structure becomes unstable and is bound to collapse. At 30, poor technique might only lead to minor issues, but by 45, it's like living in a house with a crumbling foundation where every slight movement feels risky. Rodney experienced firsthand how improper form increases the risk of injuries, especially in exercises involving the back and knees. A study in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research highlights that improper form in exercises like squats and deadlifts increases the risk of lower back injuries by over 70%. If he had learned proper form in his 30s, he would have built a more injury-resistant body. Your feet are the tires that carry your body. At 30, you might think you can get by with any shoes, but worn-out tires can cause a blowout or lead to accidents. By 45, the lack of proper footwear support can translate to foot pain, knee issues, and even back problems, like driving on bare rims. Rodney found that improper footwear contributed to his recurring knee and back issues. Research shows that improper footwear contributes to over 25% of sports injuries, especially those involving the knees and lower back. If he had invested in proper footwear earlier, he could have preserved the alignment of his lower body, reducing compensatory injuries and pain that accumulate over time. Fitness is a marathon, not a sprint. In your 30s, the hare mentality of pushing too hard too fast might seem beneficial, but it often leads to burnout and injury. By 45, you realize the tortoise approach, gradual and steady progression, wins the race. Overdoing it in youth without gradual adaptation can lead to tendinitis, stress fractures, and chronic pain later. Looking back, Rodney can see how a gradual increase in activity levels could have saved him from overuse injuries. A longitudinal study published in Sports Health found that a gradual increase in activity levels reduced overuse injuries by 40%. If he had started slow in his 30s, he would have built sustainable fitness habits, reducing the strain on muscles and bones that have become more fragile with age. Think of your body like a smartphone battery. Overuse without giving it time to recharge leads to burnout. In your 30s, neglecting rest days might feel like optimizing time, but by 45, chronic fatigue, hormonal imbalances, and recurrent injuries reveal how overworked you've become. Rodney realized the importance of rest too late. Studies have shown that athletes who don't prioritize rest are 60% more likely to suffer from repetitive stress injuries and overtraining syndrome. If he had understood this earlier, he could have designed a training regimen that allows his body to rebuild, regenerate, and strengthen without the high price of injury at 45. Water is to your body what oil is to a machine. At 30, dehydration may seem like a minor inconvenience, but by 45, you could be dealing with the chronic effects of underhydration, joint pain, headaches, and even diminished cognitive function. Rodney experienced how even mild dehydration can impair physical performance and cognitive function by up to 20%. Had he hydrated adequately in his 30s, it would have helped maintain joint lubrication and overall cellular health, keeping everything running smoothly into his 40s and beyond. Imagine your body as a high-performance vehicle needing the right fuel mix. At 30, you might get away with inconsistent nutrition, but by 45, the engine begins to sputter without the right nutrients. Poor diet choices can lead to weakened bones, poor muscle recovery, and increased injury susceptibility. Rodney learned that diets rich in protein, vitamins, and minerals help maintain muscle mass and bone density, significantly reducing injury risk. If he had understood the role of balanced nutrition earlier, he would have built a more resilient body, preventing conditions like osteoporosis and sarcopenia later. Think of your joints as hinges that, without regular oiling, start to rust and squeak. At 30, you might not notice the rust, but by 45, it's a creaky door that doesn't move smoothly anymore. Regular mobility exercises keep those hinges moving freely and without pain. Rodney realized that regular mobility exercises could have increased his joint range of motion by 35% and reduced injury risk by 25%. If he had incorporated these exercises in his 30s, he could have maintained fluid, pain-free movement and decreased the likelihood of developing arthritis or other joint issues in his 40s. Proper sleep. The body's reset button. Sleep is like pressing the reset button on your body's systems. At 30, sacrificing sleep for work or play might not seem detrimental, but by 45, it can manifest as chronic fatigue, poor recovery, and an increased risk of injury. Poor sleep disrupts hormone production, impairs recovery, and weakens the immune system. Rodney came to realize that getting less than 6 hours of sleep puts him at a 50% higher risk of injury. If he had prioritized sleep in his 30s, he could have kept his body in a state of readiness, enhancing recovery and reducing injury risks. Cross-training, balancing the scales. Think of your body as a scale that needs balance. In your 30s, sticking to one type of exercise can tilt the scale, causing muscle imbalances that lead to injuries. By 45, these imbalances become more apparent and problematic, causing back pain, knee issues, or shoulder problems. Rodney discovered that cross-training can reduce injury rates by 20% by ensuring balanced muscle development and preventing overuse injuries. If he had diversified his activities in his 30s, he could have promoted balanced development and kept pain and injuries at bay. Core strengthening. The trunk of the tree. Your core is like the trunk of a tree, providing stability and strength. At 30, neglecting core work might not show immediate damage, but by 45, a weak core is like a tree with a rotting trunk, unable to withstand the storm. Core strength is crucial for balance, posture, and preventing lower back injuries. Rodney found that core strengthening exercises reduce lower back pain and improve functional capacity. If he had engaged in core workouts in his 30s, he would have built a solid base, protecting his spine and improving overall body mechanics. Regular checkups and screenings. Think of your body as a car that needs regular servicing. At 30, skipping these checkups might seem inconsequential, but by 45, you're dealing with more serious engine issues that could have been prevented. Regular checkups help spot deficiencies, imbalances, or early signs of chronic conditions. Rodney learned that early detection of imbalances and conditions can reduce injury risk by 30%. If he had gotten regular screenings in his 30s, he could have addressed minor issues before they developed into major injuries or chronic conditions, saving him pain and hassle in his 40s. So, here you go. Do you find yourself guilty of committing some of these mistakes? If you're in your 30s, know that this is the time to act.